Michael Levine, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for sharing your audience.
Tell us about your work as a publicist and what all that entails.
Well, in America, public relations has been kind of taken on a role sort of like gift wrapping a present. And if you give someone a present and you wrap it in a very beautiful box with lovely wrapping, the person who receives the gift thinks it has a higher perceived value than if you gave it to a no box or a box of less prestige. In America, gift wrapping and public relations are analogous. We kind of gift wrap everything. Our politicians, our corporate heads, our movie and TV stars, and even our toilet paper. And so what I do is, primarily for entertainment personalities, I try and gift wrap their careers and try and make their perceived value higher, more attractive. That's kind of what the public relations game is like.
How do you set about, what sort of things do you do specifically?
With all careers, but you can do this very same thing with projects as well. People, projects, events. You take a look at what the most positive attributes of the project, event, or person is, and you try and highlight them. And if there are any negatives, you try and diminish them. It's kind of maybe similar to what a woman would do with putting on makeup. Try and accent the best features and reduce the negative, if there are any negative features. Public relations is not manipulating, it's not lying, it's not cheating. It's simply a process of gift wrapping.
If you have an actor or actress or a musician come into your office for you to represent them, what sort of conversation goes on?
Well, I think the first thing that you have to do is develop a plan. And the way you develop a plan is by taking an accurate inventory. You kind of see, like, kind of maybe analogous to an architect building a house. You have to draw up a blueprint, decide how many bedrooms you want. Well, in public relations, what you do is you meet with a client and you find out, where are you, where do you want to go, how do you want to get there, and what are some of the best attributes of that client, what are some of the weakest, and you write a media plan. And this media plan is like an architect's blueprint. And you use it in a kind of same way. You start building a foundation. Foundation would look like a press kit. Press kit would mean the right photos, the right biography, the right written material. And from that, you try and entice the media into covering your client, product, or service.
Would you tell us some of the people that you have worked with that our viewers be familiar with?
Oh, sure. I've represented everyone from Charlton Heston to Michael Jackson to Barbra Streisand to Nancy Kerrigan, Demi Moore, Michael Fox, and a whole host of others.
How do these entertainers come to know of your work? Is it word of mouth?
Primarily, it's a referral. I've worked with a lot of the agents and managers in town, attorneys, and it's primarily a referral business.
And do you handle or work with them for a certain period of time, or is it open-ended, or how does that work?
Well, in the case of Charlton Heston, I've been representing him consistently since 1983, so that's 13 years. But it's sometimes a matter of crisis planning, sometimes it's a shorter period of time, other times the relationship has a great deal of longevity, like the one with Mr. Heston.
How is your role different from that of a personal manager?
Personal managers are involved in the process of building careers and seeking employment. Publicists don't seek any employment for clients. What they do is they take what exists and gift wrap it or present it to the media in a way that hopefully makes it attractive. But I'm not involved in getting any of our clients' work.
Now, how do you access various media outlets on behalf of your clients? What's the process there?
Well, there's a whole number of ways today, particularly with technology, in which you want to communicate with the media. I mean, many media people are very involved in the internet and involved with computers and email and faxes. But a lot of other media people like to use a telephone or direct personal contact. I do a lot of socializing with media people. Find that very useful way of communicating ideas. Whatever way, I communicate with the media in whatever way they feel comfortable.
How important are your personal relationships with people in the media in relation to your ability to work on behalf of your clients?
They're central. I don't think public relations work is any different than any other work. Personal relationships, credibility, the believability of a person when they give somebody their word is just critical. And I think relationships are at the core of almost every work dynamic.
You work quite closely with some stars that you've mentioned. Are they, do they tend to be fragile people as you meet them? We see them in all their glory on the big screen. Are they quite different in your experience, in person?
I think that there is a tendency among many people to deify celebrities. Generally speaking, they're quite human, quite fragile at moments, vulnerable. I think many people would be surprised at the insecurity levels of many celebrities, even though they're adored and adulated. I think that might be surprising to some.
In what ways do you think the process of publicity has changed in Hollywood in the last, say, half century?
Quite a bit. In the 30s and the 40s, the medium was the movies. The stars of that day were discovered on the screens of motion picture theaters. Today, the medium is the media. The stars of today are not discovered in the movies. They're discovered in the cover of People magazine, or Time, or Newsweek. So the media is much bigger today than it was even 20 years ago. It has a deeper penetration, a more significant domination of the culture.
So how does your work change, or how has it changed?
Well, it makes my job more important. It also the metabolism rate of the world has increased quite a bit. Because of faxes and computers, we're going a lot faster than we did even a decade ago. So it puts an increased pressure on us to go even faster in communicating our messages.
There's a sense of some people who are in the business of representing others, that at some point they want to do some of their own work. James Baker, who was President Bush's campaign manager and Secretary of State, at some point wanted to get out of managing campaigns and do something on his own. You have stepped away from your work on behalf of others to write your own books and do your own thinking and publish a newsletter. What were you thinking during that process? Was there a sense of, I want to step out and do my own thing?
Oh, I don't know if it was that conscious. I think it's an interesting point you make. Writing a book for someone who, I must tell you, having written a few, it feels unusual. It's kind of like putting a message in a bottle and throwing it out to sea. You're never really sure who's going to see it, if it's going to be seen, when it's going to be seen. So writing a book is a strange process. It's a much more difficult process than one might consider, and how people react to it is unusual. For example, I wrote a book 5 years ago called Guerrilla PR, and about 6-7 months ago it was translated into Japanese. Now, I never would have thought 5 or 6 years ago when I began the process of writing that book, that there would be a Japanese edition, I would get a chance to see it in Japanese, and I would be talking to you today, and then we would be sharing all of our thoughts here today with your audience in Japan. So it's a very wonderful and unusual process, the process of writing a book.
What did you find the most challenging about it?
The most challenging part of writing a book is communicating ideas that are complicated simply. Finding ways of communicating to audiences that make the ideas accessible. About 220 pages to write an introduction to PR. I hope that it was understandable. I think it is. A reaction tells me that it is.
Tell us about some of your other works.
Well, I'm 42 years old, and about a year ago I wrote a book on midlife, about my midlife challenge, and some might even say crisis, where I find myself questioning things. Found out that people from the ages of about 35 to 50 tend to go through these questioning periods. Women, I am learning, tend to go through them more quickly or sooner, earlier. Women are more evolved than men, it seems. So what women kind of meet in their 30s, men tend to run into in their 40s. It's a process of confusion. Doesn't always feel good, but I think that if you can hang in and understand that there is some healthiness to depression in life, though it doesn't feel very good, that it can be useful in teaching you a little about what life is to be used for.
I want to return to what you were talking about, the package being very important.
Sure.
How important is the package vis-a-vis what's in the package?
Well, as I said earlier, if I take a gift and I wrap it nicely and bring it to you, put it in a good box and bring it to you, then there's a good chance that you think it will have a higher perceived value than if I brought it to you with no box. But if I brought you a very fancy wrapped gift box package and there was no gift inside, I think you'd be more disappointed than if I brought you no gift at all. And that's because there is a big correlation in life, I've found, between expectations and happiness. And so it's important that we gift wrap things, but it's also important that there be a gift inside.
The criticism of Hollywood is you have people who are very nicely gift wrapped on the outside, yes, and there isn't always a lot of content. Yes. Is that a valid criticism, and what role do you play?
I think that there is an element of truth to some of that criticism. I think that Hollywood is known as an illusionary facility, a town, and that is in large part predicated on impression. There's a great correlation today between credibility and visibility. So I think that that's a fair charge, but there are a lot of very, very talented people who work in the entertainment industry. Hollywood has a tremendous track record of creating the most sought-after product in every country in the world in which it's distributed.
Would you agree or disagree with the proposition that perception equals reality?
I think that there is a great deal of truth to that, particularly in our culture, that perception is often more important than reality. But I think reality is important as well. I think they're both important, and I think we have to think more multidimensionally in that area.
There were charges against Michael Jackson, for instance, although they weren't proved in a court of law. Did these charges alone make you reconsider your working with him?
Well, I have an ethical compass, and I check it regularly, and so I considered that carefully. I was convinced that Michael Jackson had done nothing that I could see that was worthy of not representing him.
What satisfaction do you take from your work?
Well, It's a very good question. It's a question I ask myself once in a while. In my more tired and broken moments, I'm not sure I have a good answer for you, but I enjoy the art of presentation. I think it has an important place. The human being is a kind of complex, multi-dimensional character, and is stimulated and intrigued by a number of things, and I think that presentation is part of it. I see myself kind of as part of that complex pathway to the human.
Can you tell us about your goals and plans and books you haven't written yet?
Well, I find myself with an ever-changing plan for an ever-changing world. That's what a midlife crisis feels like, I'll tell you. I do have a couple of book ideas that I'm working on. I am actually working on a book on the future, where I want to know what the world is going to look like 25 to 50 years from now. Thinking about that quite seriously. I'm thinking about doing a sequel on my book on midlife, which has been very well received, called Lessons at the Halfway Point. Beyond that, I'm not sure. I have an ever-changing plan for an ever-changing world.
Michael, thanks so much for joining us
Thank
today.
you. Thanks.